Hello, YouTubers. Alaska Prepper here. Well, I told you guys that I was working on an interview to bring to you guys, and this is it. So today I am going to, it's not really an interview, it's kind of like a conversation that we'll have, just collaboration between us, so that you can all listen to some of the suggestions, recommendations, and opinions of Mr. Andrei Polgar, who is the author of The Age of Anomaly, which is teaching people how to prepare and how to spot upcoming financial crises. So let me introduce Mr. Andrei Polgar. How you doing today, my friend?
Doing very, very well. Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, it's my pleasure. And ladies and gentlemen, just so you know that Andrei is from Romania. That's right, right, Andrei? You're from Romania.
Yep, the exact region I'm in is actually called Transylvania, which tends to be a conversation starter.
Oh, nice. So
No
that's
vampires that I'm aware of, though.
no vampires over there. So do you get a lot of sun over there at least?
Um, it's a very great place to live. It has its pros and cons. It's for the most part a love-hate relationship.
Okay. Well, before we start off, why don't you tell us a little bit something about yourself? What inspired you to write this book? And maybe give us a little information on where you live and what it's like over there for those of us that have never been there.
Sure. Many people know me as the economist guy from 1 Minute Economics. I have a pretty popular YouTube channel, and this kind of gives me a sense of responsibility towards people. And it's that sense of responsibility coupled with the fact that I've been through pretty nasty stuff myself after the crisis of '07 to '08. It's this combination that made me decide to spend so much time writing the book and educating people about the thing I specialize in, which is financial preparedness. As a bit of background information about myself, I obviously didn't have many offline opportunities here in Romania. So I ended up building businesses right out of high school. They went well. I got accepted to college and things seemed perfect. But just when the crisis of '07 to '08 started, my mom got sick and we don't have an amazing medical system here in Romania. So I took her to get better treatment abroad. And needless to say, it took its toll on my finances, whatever was left of them eventually. And not only that, but the global financial crisis of '07 '08 took its toll on my businesses as well. And it's that perfect situation which made me realize that behind numbers, behind headlines that you see on financial television, there are actual people with actual needs and actual destinies that can be destroyed. So the stakes are very high, and especially since so many people look up to me now on YouTube and care what I have to say, I feel very motivated to essentially spread awareness about financial preparedness to anyone who cares to listen.
Very good. That was great. And Andrei, you said that the name of your YouTube channel is what?
1 Minute Economics. It's
Okay.
basically a channel where I teach people, anything from basics like inflation and deflation to things like how the banking system works, fractional reserve banking. I do that through 1 minute animations, and basically it works. Like so many people are contacting me to say, I've never been good at economics, but when watching your animations, it all sounds so easy to understand. And once again, this is yet another thing that makes me realize that I'm pretty good at making complicated stuff easy to understand. And in the end, I do try to reach as many people as possible through my work because I know these things actually have tangible results.
That's outstanding. And you know what? I'm not just saying this, but I'm pretty sure that I've seen some of your videos in the past. Just having found out
Oh
that
yeah,
that's your YouTube channel.
oh yeah. It's just crazy how a channel that started out as a hobby ended up, you know, kind of gaining traction because my videos are nowadays, they've even been featured on MSN, or I've even seen them on television in anywhere from Croatia and Holland to, I've even seen them recently in Kenya, believe it or not.
That's
So
awesome.
it's unbelievable how this, how through the internet your work can essentially get propagated all over the place.
Right, and I'm not mentioning that if you do something that you really enjoy and that you're really passionate about, that eventually people will catch on to it because they can tell that you're genuine in what you're saying in your videos.
Exactly, exactly. People are so sick and tired of the talking heads that you see on financial television, people who are sharply dressed and say a lot of words but don't really get the message across. So they ended up kind of liking my way of teaching economics, which is from the perspective of not an arrogant economics professor, but a friend who just so happens to be good at economics. And it's that kind of, you pointed it out very well, it's that kind of authenticity that gets people hooked on economics, that kind of convinces them to at least pay some attention to the things I'm saying.
Right, right. Okay. So I went through your book, and I'm going to confess that I didn't read the whole thing, but I did go through a lot of it. And I noticed that in your book that one of the things that I like best about your book, or the parts that I read, is that they're not made for technical people. I mean, I'm saying your writing wasn't written for a technician, or a financial analyst. It was written for the average person on the street, with words that they can
Exactly.
understand. So that's one of the things that I really like about it, because I think that one of the things that throws people off as far as education goes is that when people try to produce something or make something for the average person, they forget what the average person is like, and they think that they're more educated than well, let me put it a different way. When people try to write something and teach something, they're a lot of times trying to project their knowledge onto others, trying to say, look at how smart I am. Where in reading this book,
Exactly.
yeah, and reading and going through your book, I can tell that you had a specific audience in mind, and that you wrote it for that audience instead of trying to say, hey, look, guys, this is how smart I am. Aren't I great? But instead, you're giving
Exactly.
them information
My
they can use.
my biggest pet peeve with many economists is just this, that they love sounding smart, and
Right.
they end up losing people because of this. So the promise I essentially made to people with my book is this: it will not seem like you have this arrogant guy talking down to you from his ivory tower, and instead, when reading my book, you will get the impression that you just have a friend who's giving you tips. A friend who, of course, just so happens to be good at economics. But I try to keep it practical. I try to keep it down to earth, because otherwise you lose your audience. And if you lose your audience, it's all in vain.
Absolutely, because I can tell you this right now. I'm going to finish reading your book. Obviously, I've been really busy here for the last month and a half or two. In Alaska, the season where it's non-winter, we have two seasons in Alaska. We have a winter season and we have a building season. So the building season goes by very quickly. So I've been very busy trying to catch up on everything that I need to get done. But as I said, I'm going to continue to read it. But if I would have opened up this book and I would have started reading things, and every other paragraph I had to go to the dictionary to find out what this word meant, I wouldn't, I would have put it down. So it makes a lot of sense when
Oh,
you
yeah.
say, if someone feels comfortable when they open that book and they're like, well, this is a really good read, they're going to keep reading it instead of being frustrated. So another thing that I really like about what I've read so far is that your book is broken down into a lot of small stories, explaining to people what it is that happened. For example, one of the things that I want to cover in our short time here is the Great Depression. So you have a short story that depicts the Great Depression and what happened during that time and what caused it, and all those things. But you also have small stories on the .com bubble. You have small stories about the Weimar Republic, and that's what I like about it. It's all broken down, and you don't have to think that you have to read 30 pages just to figure out, what happened during this one short time in, in our history. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, and the reason I'm asking about the Great Depression is because that's something that almost everyone knows. Almost everybody can tell you, yeah, this is kind of what happened during the Great Depression, around what time. Do you see any correlations between what caused the Great Depression and what we're going through now and our economy now as it stands?
Most definitely. Like in the Great Depression, like in many other situations, pretty much the same mistakes are being made time and time again. Like, for example, in the Great Depression, you had a period of prosperity known as the Roaring Twenties, when everyone was feeling wealthy, when it seemed that everyone was making money, and of course, human nature kicks in, and this numbs us. This makes us complacent, and it's that complacency that will cost us inevitably when things get south, when things go south. Also, after the Great Depression, after things went downhill, what have we seen? Well, we've seen much of the same that we're seeing right now. We have seen back then that countries have done their best to weaken their currencies so as to be more competitive against other countries. The same thing is happening right now. The same way countries all over the world, as we're speaking, are doing their best to boost exports by making their currencies cheaper. What else have we seen in the Great Depression? Well, we have seen that after doing this to their currency, so after essentially currency wars, after that, countries embarked on protectionist measures. Each country wanted to protect its own economy, and when everyone does it, the result is a full-fledged trading war and trade war, and we're seeing the same now. We're seeing a huge trend worldwide across many countries of protectionism, and in the end, this is my important thing that I tell people. It all revolves around economics a lot of times if you go to the root of the problem. And what happened after the Great Depression? Well, you had a financial crisis. You had the countries going to weaken their currencies. You then had countries engaging in trade wars, and you then had an actual conflict.
Yep, an actual
And
hot
that's
war.
what I try. Yeah, that's what I tell people. If you look throughout history at many of the major armed conflicts that have taken place, so many of them have economics at their foundation, which is why I try to continuously explain why it is so important to keep your eyes open when it comes to the economic dimension, because in many situations the economic dimension is kind of like a canary in the coal mine. It warns you right now and tells you, look, this is a time to start preparing because worse things are coming.
Outstanding. Yep, I agree 100%. And Andrei, let me ask you something. Uh, how do governments, I'm asking this question for the average person out there that may be listening to this channel for the first time. So, how do governments devalue their currency? Because, for example, let me just put it to you this way: like, does China or does the U.S. just wake up today and say, "Hey, you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and devalue the dollar, so now it's worth less." What actions do they take to devalue their currency?
Countries have devalued their currency for ages. For example, back when currencies were actually precious metal coins, like gold coins,
Right, in
the
the Roman
debasing
era.
of currency, the debasing of currency basically involved people collecting coins, the government collected, or the central authority collecting coins, melting them, adding some less valuable metal in there, and essentially the result was more coins, but which were less in terms of
Right,
precious metal
and
content.
that's exactly what I was getting at. That the way that governments devalue their currencies is by printing more. In this day and age, is by printing more money. By and large, devaluing their currency through inflation, through inflating the money supply. So yeah,
Exactly.
so it's one of the things that I really like to push for people to understand that when they go to the store and see that a box of cereal is now worth 20% more, it's not that the contents in that box is valued at 20% more, but that the dollar that you have in your pockets is valued at 20% less. So that's what's going on when when they see inflation. People think that inflation is the price of things going up, where in fact, and let me know if you agree with me, inflation is when the value of your dollar is going down because more of it is being produced. Is that a good
Definitely. And
is that did I say that correctly?
you pointed out a very important thing, yes. And just to tell you guys what the context of it all is, just think about the fact that in the United States, at the height of quantitative easing, they have essentially, quote unquote, printed $1 trillion per year. To give you context for this, please think about how from 1913, when the Federal Reserve appeared, up until the Great Recession, so in almost 100 years, the monetary base was just about 850 billion. So
Hmm.
essentially, more was pumped into the system in 1 year than had existed after almost 100 years of central banking in the United States. And eventually, there is going to be a major price that needs to be paid for this reckless behavior.
That's right, and that's going to be inflation is going to be one of the symptoms our of the cancer. The cancer is money printing, and inflation is one of the symptoms.
Most definitely, like so far, after the dot com bubble, after the Great Recession, we've gotten used to this narrative that yes, markets are crashing and yes, people are panicking, but don't worry, central banks and governments have it all under control. And each time they give the economy a bigger dose of economic cocaine, if you will. And of course, we're going to have another market crash. And of course, they will probably try to do more of the same. But what I am concerned of, and in my book I articulate this more clearly, what I am concerned about is that things are already so unsustainable that eventually the market is going to say no. The market is going to say, I no longer trust the ability of governments and central banks to fix this problem. And yes, as you've pointed out, when that happens, when the market says no, everything, you know, it's every man for himself because everything is dependent on confidence. As I explain in my videos on YouTube, the banking system, the monetary system at this point, they are all heavily confidence dependent. And when that confidence is lost, the value of currencies or the value of anything that has to do with governments and central banks will inevitably plummet.
Okay, so Andrei, can you do me a favor? Can you explain to the audience what is the difference between having fiat and having gold, or do you even recommend that people hold precious metals to protect the purchasing power of their value of their labor? So pretty much what I'm asking is what do I do to protect myself? What is the average person on the street who has the average job, who has a mortgage, who has a little bit of credit card debt, who has a wife and kids, and he needs to put food on the table and keep their house warm? What does the average person do to protect himself and to protect his family uh, if and when a crisis like this occurs?
Well, the main difference between holding precious metals and holding fiat is the fact that, at the very least, precious metals don't have an infinite supply. You cannot just do what has happened with fiat. You cannot just in 1 year mine more precious metals than had existed after almost 100 years of activity. Or let's just say it's incredibly unlikely for that to happen. So I definitely believe that yes, it should be a part of everyone's strategy. You've pointed out correctly that the average person who has some debt, who has bills to pay, who has to put food on the table, it's hard for that person to diversify properly. So words cannot begin to describe how important it is for people to meaningfully do something right after watching this video, because these things, just after listening to us, because these things take time to implement. So for the average person, you don't have a lot of money. So it's in your best interest, and is the only rational thing you can do, to look towards investments that have asymmetrically high potential returns in your case. Once again, it's not easy to execute this, but it's the most common question I get, actually. And I tell people, one, for the love of God, please invest in yourself. Please invest in anything from your education to something that helps you become better at your job, so that you can make a little bit of money, more than you're making right now. And that extra little bit of money, you set it aside each month, and it adds up. So number one, especially for people who don't have a huge amount of money at their disposal, investing in yourself generates amazingly high returns in the long run. So the sooner you do that, the better. Number two, try to tackle your debt, especially of course, it's difficult. It's easy to talk about living beneath your means, but we all have responsibilities. The only thing I'm telling people is to do their best to tackle their debt, and if they cannot tackle it completely, which is perfectly understandable, at least do something about your higher yielding debt, about your credit card debt, about the type of debt which is bound to be a much bigger burden when things go south. So be sure to take care of that as well. And other than that, even if you don't have a lot of capital, you can still try diversifying within reason. Like, even when it comes to fiat currency, it makes sense to have a little bit of cash nearby, because as Warren Buffett points out, money is like oxygen. You don't notice it most of the time, but when you need it and don't have it, believe me, you'll notice. So in any strategy, having a small cushion of cash makes sense. And then, to the best of your ability, try to, they are called in the investment world hedges, or things you invest in not to make a lot of money, but to protect yourself.
Right.
And these things, whether we're talking about precious metals or cryptocurrencies even, if you're smart enough to be using a smartphone, maybe you can invest 3-4% of what you have in cryptocurrencies, because both, leaving all of their problems aside, both precious metals, cryptocurrencies, they have major advantages. They complement one another nicely. You can use your precious metals if internet access is taken from people. Gold is still going to be gold. Silver is still going to be silver. Whereas when it comes to cryptocurrencies, I don't know, if you have to leave the country and flee, it's awesome to have this asset on you that you can have access to without anything physical in your possession. You can just remember a few words and you have access to them. So there are scenarios for which precious metals are great. There are scenarios for which cryptocurrencies is great. So if you just make it a goal of having your own little personalized stash when it comes to these assets, it doesn't have to be enough. It has to be just enough to enable you to land on your feet. And if you do these things collectively, words cannot describe how better off you're going to be than the average consumer.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned cryptocurrencies, because I know that the audience that I cater to here in the Alaska Prepper channel, uh, I did a survey once, or not really a survey, but I brought up cryptocurrencies, and I can tell by the comments that most of my audience is not for cryptocurrencies. Can you give me your outlook on cryptocurrencies, maybe now and in the future, as far as it goes to finance? Because I've heard people say, and I have a tendency to agree, that cryptocurrencies, or the blockchain specifically, is going to be the internet of money, or it's kind of like it's going to be as big as the internet was back in the 90s to today, but it's going to be for money. If I said that correctly.
Will it, in terms of sheer size, be as big as a phenomenon as the internet? That I do not know. But are they here to stay? And is crypto always going to be a huge phenomenon? Yes. And to those who are skeptical, I understand there are many pitfalls in something as new as cryptocurrencies. But please imagine that you're a person in a country that's unstable. Your wealth is the house you live in, $10,000 worth of precious metals, your car, and one Bitcoin that you paid $20,000 for in December and it crashed in value. So you bought it at the worst possible time. Let us imagine that you are forced to leave the country. What happens to your wealth? Well, the value of your real estate goes to zero essentially because you have to leave it behind. The same way, if you have to travel a huge distance, and maybe even across the ocean, you're not going to be able to take your car with you. So that will go to zero as well. When it comes to precious metals, if you have a long journey ahead of you with many pitfalls, they are portable, but there's a high likelihood that they will be confiscated at the border, or that
Right.
someone will steal them, from you. So ironically, even that one Bitcoin that you overpaid for in December last year might just be enough to help your family have a fresh start. So this is an example of a scenario that's in which crypto makes perfect sense. But of course, what if we lose internet access? Something that also might happen eventually. In that case, obviously, I would much rather be holding physical precious metals than cryptocurrencies. So in the end, what I tell people is this: I wish I knew for a fact what is going to happen.
Andrea, are you still there?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I had an
can you hear
incoming
me?
phone call. Yes, I can hear you. I had an incoming phone call, but I went ahead and turned it off. Go ahead, continue. I'm sorry about that.
No, no problem at all. What I My main point is this: I would be the happiest person in the world to be able to tell people that I know exactly what scenario is going to unfold, because of course, if I knew that, then you only had to prepare for that one scenario and it would be a lot easier for you. But unfortunately, I do not, and neither does anyone else. So essentially, there are scenarios in which crypto works better or scenarios in which precious metals work better, you have to, because nobody knows with certainty what happens next, you unfortunately have to prepare yourself for all those scenarios, which is why I think that we do not have to consider precious metals and cryptocurrencies, for example, arch enemies. Instead, we can consider them assets that complement one another nicely. And by having exposure in a smart way and in a small dose, because of course people aren't, all rich enough to be able to do it properly, but even even in a very small dose, a little bit of smart diversification can be from a financially perspective, and not only from a financial perspective, the results can be life altering.
Excellent, excellent. So let me just give you a quick small scenario here. So if I'm your average guy on the street, like I said before, and I can't afford to go buy an ounce of gold, let's say that every payday I just go and buy myself five dimes, five pre
Yeah.
1965 dimes, and I maybe build up enough courage to maybe buy myself one or two Litecoins, or a tenth or even a 20th of a Bitcoin, and I have a little bit of cash in the house because they do say that usually during the first 2 weeks to a month after an economic crisis, cash is king, and then of
Yep.
course what I promote in my channel is what's called the 5 B's of prepping. And of course, you want to make sure that before you have any of those monetary hedges, that you have food, water, shelter, any kind of medical needs or medical supplies that you may need during a crisis where maybe the supply lines are shut off for a while. And of course, I do promote having a way of defending your preps. So you don't want to be prepping, having food and water and
Yeah.
all these things, and then having the toughest guy in the block come and yank it from you because you can't protect it. And then, of course, the fourth one my fourth B of prepping is bullion, I call it, and it stands for precious metals. And in this case, I guess it would also stand for a little bit of Bitcoin or a little bit of cryptos. Would you say that the average guy in the street, if he's got a setup like I just explained to you, he may not, prosper in an economic collapse, but he may be able to survive?
Exactly, because the name of the game is that even if you don't thrive, you will at least land on your feet. And even the couple of Litecoins he bought, it might not be enough to have an amazing fresh start, but you can move to a country that's better off, or you can, after the dust settles and you have to relocate elsewhere, it may be enough to get you shelter for a month or two. It may be enough to feed your family for a month or two. And that in and of itself is great. And the same way, even if you don't have an ounce of gold, that's fine. The little bit of precious metals you have, once the right time comes, they're going to enable you to have a fresh start. So yes, it's very important for people to understand that even a small safety cushion does wonders and can make the difference between not having any options and having many options, in fact.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a story that I saw once on YouTube. Actually, it was a documentary on the Great Depression, and this little girl asked her father, "Dad, why is it that our neighbors always have food and they always have everything they need and they still have a car, and we're always going hungry?" And the father told his daughter, "That's because they saved their silver and gold." So they weren't rich, but they had everything they needed to survive.
Exactly, and this is why I'm trying so hard. I'm all over YouTube, all over the place, trying to generate awareness for these things because precisely nobody wants to put in the work. Nobody wants to, as you've said in your example, save their gold and silver and be financially responsible. You have so many people who just live paycheck to paycheck, and even if they could do something more to become resilient, they're just too distracted. There are just too many things that demand our attention and keep us busy. But when disaster strikes, it's not like a financial crisis is going to just knock on your door and say, "Yeah, I'm thinking about crashing the economy. Is it okay if I do it now, or should I return 6 months from now?"
Right.
Unfortunately, when disaster strikes, nobody is going to care that you didn't have time. Nobody is going to care that you had other priorities. When it strikes, and that's when essentially the difference is going to be made. Those who, as you pointed out in your example, protect themselves, they will land on their feet again. You don't have to, thrive. They're going to land on their feet. Whereas the average family, yeah, it's behind economics, behind the numbers. There are such stories of going hungry, of seeing your children have to go hungry, and that's why the stakes are so unbelievably high. It goes way beyond the numbers.
Right, right. Well, Andre, believe it or not, we're running short on time here. It feels like I can talk to you here about this for another hour or two. So let me ask you, would you mind coming on again, maybe in the next couple of months or so that we can talk about the what's going on during that time or what's happened between now and then?
Sure, I would be more than happy to hop on again whenever you guys think that my input would be appreciated. And since
Absolutely.
you've mentioned since you mentioned the average person, and the fact that so many people just don't have money to spend, uh, one important thing about the Age of Anomaly is that if people buy it until the 12th of August, and this is actually, I'm not kidding with this, the price is only going to be 99 cents. It's basically
Nice.
my way of it's basically my way of giving the book away practically, but just symbolically having people say, okay, I'm spending 99 cents, so I'm invested in this message. I have a reason to pay closer attention. So
Outstanding.
at this, yeah, essentially everyone, like it's a 400 plus page book, but it's going to be pleasant to read. And I just hope that as many people as possible can kind of leverage my knowledge, can take advantage of the things I teach them in the book. And of course, as you've pointed out, because it always goes beyond the economics as well, include the things I have to say in their overall plan.
Right. So your book is going to be for sale. Is it going to be for sale on Amazon, Andre?
Yes, it can be found at most places books are sold. You can just search for its name, The Age of Anomaly, on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, on iBooks, which is Apple's app, and on Kobo. Or you can just visit ageofanomaly.com, which is a small page I set up just which contains all of the links.
Okay, excellent. And so, Andrei, do you mind if I provide a link for your book for Amazon?
Sure, no
Okay.
problem at all. And also speaking of crypto, to kind of tell people, look, I do want to keep an optimistic spin on things as well. I'm having a contest as of Monday the 6th and until Sunday the 12th, where people, if they want to promote my book and tell people on Facebook about it or Twitter or whatever they can do, I reward them with chances at winning some cool prizes. Like I have sponsors on board. The first prize, believe it or not, is one BTC. The second one is one Ether and one Litecoin. I also
Wow.
have like $100 cash prizes for 10 people, $100 Amazon gift card. So just I'm kind of doing my best to fight for people's attention, because I know that even when you're selling ideas, you're still selling, and I know how distracted the average person is. So as someone who wants to spread a message and reach people's minds, your only option is to do what I'm doing, to think outside the box and to kind of do your best to reach as many people as you possibly can.
Well, Andrei, if the first prize is one BTC, I might have to enter that contest like 100 times.
Of course, I really have some great prizes, especially thanks to my sponsors who wanted to help the channel and generate some positivity around all this. I'm really excited about the opportunity of essentially getting people to think about these things and doing so in a constructive, positive way. I just hope as many as possible end up doing something meaningful as a result of my work.
That's outstanding, Andrei. And you know what? One of the things that I say on my channel is reach one, teach one, and repeat, and the world will be a better
Yep.
place. And that's
Oh, yeah.
absolutely what you're doing. And I appreciate that you're doing that, because I tell people, if you want to start your own YouTube channel, start it. Even if you only have 10 subscribers or 100 subscribers, put out the message, because the more
Yep.
people that put the message out, the more people that are going to hear it. And hopefully some of them will listen to it and act on it. So that's a great thing that
It
you're
all
doing.
adds up, for sure.
Yeah, it's a great thing that you're doing, and I truly do appreciate your time today. I'm very, very happy that you came on, and like I said, I'll be bugging you here in the next couple of months, because I'm sure that my viewers are going to really want to listen to you again, because I know you have a lot
Sure,
more
would
to
be
say than
happy to
what we
hop
just
on again.
covered. Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, the name of the book is The Age of Anomaly. I'll go ahead and leave a link for it. Now, Andrei, your book comes out tomorrow, right, on the 6th?
Yeah, my big promo week starts tomorrow. It's already available, but yeah, the official promo week and the contest is going to start as of tomorrow, the 6th of August. And again, if you want to take advantage of the discount window, be sure to buy it as early as possible, because as of the end of the day on Sunday the 12th, the promo period is going to be over.
Okay, and I definitely will leave a link for that to make it easy for our viewers to go ahead and take advantage of that. And then again, Andrei, the name of your YouTube channel is 1 Minute Economics, right?
Yep.
Okay, because I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to your channel too, because I think that the message that you're putting out and the things that you're saying, it's so important for people to know about these things, so that, especially for the people that have
Yeah.
worked all their lives and saved, and I hear of people, I know some people that have $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in the bank, but they don't own 1 ounce of silver. So this is very important.
Exactly. It's so important to get people to take action, whether they buy my book, whether they do anything that has to do with me. I just hope that in these, many interviews that I'm doing, being all over the place, I just convince as many as possible to think about these things.
Okay, Andrei. Well, Andrei, will you stand by for a minute so we can talk a little bit after the recording is done?
Sure.
I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. Like I said again, as you can see on the screen, the name of the book is The Age of Anomaly by Mr. Andrei Polgar. And I do hope that you go ahead and check out his YouTube channel at 1 Minute Economics. I will leave a link to where you can get the book and to Andrei's YouTube channel. Okay. Thank you very much, Andrei, for joining us today. And having said that, ladies and gentlemen, remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place. And you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is the Alaska Prepper, and I'm out.